Good morning, Dan, and welcome to Inspiring Courage podcast. I'm delighted to have you here today.
Yeah, hey Vafa, so good to be here. So good to be here.
It's lovely to finally catch up with you. We've been trying to record this for a while, haven't we? But life's gotten the better of us. Dan, you are a mental health activist and a keynote speaker, and I came across your work through a mutual friend of ours. And I was supporting you back in 2017 when you were running all the way from Rome to London. I must admit, I was a part of that journey, kind of watching from the background what was happening. So I want to take my hat off to you for doing it. Great cause. And I guess the reason I've invited you to speak with me is because you're such an inspirational figure and you have gone to huge lengths to help people out, to share your story, which wasn't particularly easy for you at the start. And all you're trying to do, from what I'm getting from the conversations we've had, is that you're trying to raise that awareness that it is okay to talk about this. And hence, that's where our overlap is, because I very much kind of want people to be able to speak about what they're experiencing so that they can make sense of that story. And they kind of need to choose the people that they speak to so that they're not discouraged and be able to reach their lifelong purpose. So without further ado, would you please take us through your story, maybe a little bit before you running all the way from Rome to
Yeah.
London, and also the reasons that you got prompted to do that, please?
Definitely, and it is so good to be here, Vafa. Has been a long time coming, hasn't it? Since we've come into each other's worlds, this is so overdue. So it's so good to be here. So as you've touched on, I'm smiling every time I talk about it. But in 2017, I did run from the Colosseum in Rome back to the London Eye. Just me and my backpack, over 65 truly life affirming days. It was amazing. It was like this oil painting that I was lucky enough to live in and breathe and smell and taste. And I was the brush, bringing this vision to life over 65 days, setting off in the height of summer, 7 a.m., setting off from the Colosseum with the sunbeams through the arches of the Colosseum in Rome, up through Tuscany with that summer heat, all the way up to the Alps, 2 days up, 2 days down over the Alps near Mont Blanc, down to Lake Geneva, up through France to Paris, 54-mile day running into Paris, crossing the English Channel, and then this huge, beautiful build up to arriving at the London Eye on the 28th of October 2017. And it was amazing. But as you know, Vafa, it wasn't just an idea I came up with to just go and run from Italy back to the UK. It was actually a celebration of this 5-year journey that I'd been on leading up to 2017. So in 2012, I got offered this incredible new job for this amazing charity that changes the lives of underprivileged young people by taking them out to the mountains and using the power of skiing and snowboarding and the mountain environment to change the lives of these hugely underprivileged inner city young people that would just never have access to that lifestyle. And I remember when I got given that role, it felt like this huge weight had got lifted off my shoulders. For so many years leading up to 2012, I put so much pressure on myself to bring all my passions together and to channel that into something that would ultimately make the world a greater place. But what happened when I started at that role is, this kind of burst of energy wasn't just applied to these young people. I started thinking, well, if I've got this much capacity to positively impact these young people, why wouldn't I try and apply that to society as a whole? And then if I was going to stop with the United Kingdom, why wouldn't I try and change the world? And so over the course of 6 months in 2012, this dopamine and this adrenaline and, these ideas just getting faster and faster and faster and faster. And I ended up on the middle of a motorway in Italy in the summer of 2012 in the state of a full-scale psychotic episode. So I'd completely lost my mind. So if any of us, push our minds to the limit like that over 6 months, day in, day out, not sleeping, not really exercising, not paying attention to our nutrition, all these warning signs going off, then, it was only going to end one way, Vafa. So it ended up in psychiatric wards, got the diagnosis of bipolar disorder. And that really started this, huge dark valley that I had to go through. Before stripping it all back, starting again, speaking up to me about what really matters most, being vulnerable with my story, then seeing the effect that it was having on other people, namely giving permission for other people to speak openly about the struggles that they were all facing. And so with that 5-year journey of recovery, I knew that, with these, gifts in terms of being able to share a message and inspire other people to be courageous, to speak openly about the things which were really troubling them at the time. Seeing this and being part of that conversation in the mental health landscape for 5 years, I knew I had to do something really positive, really powerful, and couldn't think of a better way to do it than by returning to Italy. But this time, instead of standing on the middle of a motorway, I was going to look after myself, and this time use it as a huge platform to hopefully inspire thousands of others to speak up about what really matters most to them as well.
I love it. I love it. You took me on a journey as you were talking about your journey. I was with you because I've been lucky enough to have visited all those places that you talked about. So I was with you during that journey. And of course, I've heard this before because I was supporting you hugely. And you raised a couple of really good points, which I often talk about. And it's one, being aware of what's happening is that kind of awareness. And when we ignore that sensation, and I guess a lot of us, especially the left brain thinkers, we kind of ignore the sensations we get in our body. We kind of ignore the fact that, okay, we haven't slept, we haven't had proper nutrition, we haven't looked after ourselves. This is going to kind of, end badly. But we don't pay attention to the sensations. Do we? If we did, we would actually see the warning signs. And yet, unfortunately for some of us, it leads to something like that. For you, a psychotic event, for me, a burnout, until we actually realize that, we do need to kind of take time out. And I know what you're saying, that it's a dark tunnel when you're traveling down that road of recovering and healing almost, and I don't know about you, I'll be curious to find out what your thoughts were, but for me, there was a lot of shame and guilt also that was attached to how I was feeling, because I was this really successful, high achieving professional, and I was, excuse me, determined and tenacious, and, I didn't let anything stop me. I just kind of kept going. And that when I finally couldn't go on any longer and had to stop, I had a huge amount of kind of shame and guilt that, gosh, I'm not a good parent. I'm not showing, best modeling. I'm not, kind of performing best modeling behavior to my child by kind of being in this really negative space. And also that again took a long time for me to make peace with. And then I gave myself permission to actually feel the feelings and kind of, share the story and being okay with not being okay in a way, And I don't know if any of those kind of went through your mind at the time.
Yeah, they really did. And was there a particular moment, Vafa, which sort of sparked your release, where you just accepted that chapter that you were in?
No, I think for me it was an evolution over time.
Yeah.
There wasn't, I can't tell you a specific time that I suddenly thought, okay, fine, it's fine now. It was literally by showing up, literally by being courageous, literally by kind of sharing the story. And I guess that's what our mission is, isn't it, Dan? For both you and I to share the story. The purpose of this podcast is to share stories of inspirational people who've been in the deepest, darkest of places, and yet they've kind of, gotten to their place of enlightenment.
Absolutely.
So that doesn't happen by accident, does it? It's not an overnight process. It's a very, very long process. So you're here articulating the story beautifully, but you've gone through a lot of pain to actually get here. That's my guess. Am I right?
Yeah, it was a lot of pain. And in my darkest moment, I was suicidal, Vafa. I just wanted that pain to stop. And so when I revisit that chapter, and I know I skimmed through it relatively quickly, but, when I came out the psychiatric wards, the next 6 months that followed were debilitating, absolutely excruciating. And even, in practical terms, just trying to walk 2 meters to brush my teeth in the morning was so painful. I just could not lift this weight that was pushing me into my mattress for 6 months. Curtains closed, disconnected, didn't want to see anybody. I think my biggest challenge that I faced is that I had so much conviction in my beliefs and my ideas and the impact I was going to have on the world. And on that motorway moment, I believed I was the chosen one. I believed I'd been put on this planet to ease as much of the world's suffering as possible. Obviously, the way I was going about it, stopping traffic on a motorway, is not to be recommended. But I had so much conviction in every word that was leaving my lips. And then suddenly there I was, what felt like a split second later, and I couldn't trust my brain. I couldn't trust any word that was leaving my lips.
I
And
I know.
it was and that for me was the most painful thing. You know, here I was, what, you know, it felt almost like I was trapped in this
Mhm.
body, and I simply couldn't, I had no conviction at all.
Mm.
And it was you know, really debilitating time. You know, I'm just so fortunate for the people that I had in my life, obviously with my closest family, and my wife Georgina, the counselling that I was lucky enough to have as well. But certainly, yeah, I mean, there's so many things that jumped out, you know, when you were speaking just there, because I think what then came through that journey that I personally had to go on with, completely simplifying and discovering minimalism and living much more intentionally with how I personally was going to go about the world. And we can come back to some of those things, but you
Mhm.
know, I had to make a choice whether I was going to be open about my experiences
Mhm.
or shut them away and, you know, burden myself with more shame and more guilt that was unnecessary. And so, you know, I remember it started one to one at a friend's barbecue. You know, when they said, "Dan, what happened to you last year? You know, what were the events that led up to you being ending up in psychiatric wards?" And I just started small and had that conversation one to one. But what I realised was quite quickly that other people were really gravitating towards this conversation. And then over the next couple of weeks, it'll be, "Dan, actually, can we just have a chat? Because I've got this thing going on, or my brother's got this thing going on, or my sister, she's struggling right now. Can we just have a conversation about that?" And so it was really them being a witness to
Mhm.
three things that were happening. You know, I felt much lighter every time I spoke about my experiences. It almost made sense of the journey that I'd been on. I built an even greater support network around me.
Yep.
Vafa, I know, you know, it still
I
happens to
know.
this day that I know I could reach out to you and
Yep.
offload if I wanted to. But you know, what I discovered the most was that 9 times out of 10, just by being vulnerable and courageous with being open about my experiences, I was giving permission for the other person to be open as well. And that's obviously the power of storytelling. That's why
Exactly.
jumping on this podcast together was an absolute yes, because it's the power of real conversations about the things
Yep.
which matter most.
Yep.
Um, and it's pure magic, isn't it? You know, every
Yep.
one of your episodes, you know, have really told that human story about the struggles that we all face on a daily basis. But when we can draw the meaning out of what we've been through and channel that to inspire others, to be courageous, to
Love
live
it.
life on our terms, there's nothing greater than that.
Love it, love it. And just everything I talk about, everything I believe, it's the power of storytelling. And almost you didn't believe your story, did you? Until you kind of quietly, confidently, or quietly in confidential kind of, said that story to a friend. And then by people gravitating, you thought, oh, maybe there is some power in this story. And it is the power of storytelling. And it's the power of kind of believing that what we've gone through can be inspiration for somebody else, or can stop somebody else going through. And that is my purpose, really. So I work with a lot of stuck professionals who want more in their life,
Mm.
and it is because I've been there, because my purpose is to kind of share the knowledge and share the expertise that I have in that region, so that they don't go through what I went through, that they allow themselves to kind of feel what they're feeling and not feel the outsider, or if they are the outsider, to allow themselves to be the outsider. It's fine, so long as you can kind of put a name on it. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of
Yeah.
saying that, fine, I'm comfortable with being different, and this is how I'm going to conduct myself, rather than feel the shame that you don't belong to that kind of pack, if you like, because we're pack animals, aren't we? We want to
Yeah.
belong. And that's what you're talking about, that by having that support network around you, that's how you've managed to heal and go forward. And it is about connection. So what I got from you there, what you said, was that you felt disconnected. And
Mm.
that is typically what's going on. Just look around us. There's so much disconnection in the world, and unfortunately it's happening at a younger and younger and younger age. And it's by kind of raising people's awareness to again be really aware of what's happening, and being able to articulate the emotions that they are
Yeah.
experiencing at the time, and welcoming the negative emotions also. Don't knock those negative emotions out of the picture, because they're trying to tell you something. So just
Absolutely.
understand what they're trying to tell you, and that's how you and I would have stopped, right? if we were more aware, maybe.
Absolutely.
I'm
Yeah,
just kind of, can't go back in hindsight, and I'm glad,
absolutely.
for me, I'm glad it's happened the way it's happened, because I am the
Yeah,
person I am now, and I'm
me
very
too.
happy
Me
with
too. I
it.
wouldn't have changed a thing.
No, but it's how, as you're saying beautifully, how to kind of promote other people to think differently, to raise awareness. So what you're doing, tell me your next steps, tell me what you're involved in at the moment to raise the awareness.
Yeah, I can do, and it actually feeds really well to this exact point that we're on now, because I still say to this day that everything we've gone through in life is still setting us up for what's to come, and we could be 80, and that is still true. Every single one of those nuanced experiences, the small things that we experience day to day, and the big life events are all setting us up for what's to come. It's all setting us up for that next adventure. And I'm huge with visuals, Vafa, and that feeds into what I do now, which is delivering immersive, experiential live talks. Obviously, at the moment, as best we can virtually, but at the core of my work is bringing people together to talk about what really matters most. The big why is to empower others to speak up about what's really going on for them. And whether that's with a podcast episode, or whether that's with another running adventure, or whether that's a live keynote talk or a virtual event, it's all channeled towards that same sense of why, which I know you carry so much, Vafa, with all the different strands of your work. But I do really believe that. I believe everything that we've accrued in life, whether even if it's our habits or our relationships or our commitments or every single journey, we've all come on different journeys to be where we are in this moment. Here we are in February 2021, and we've all experienced this great defining chapter in all of our lives where we've all had to take a step back and just slow down and have a good think about how we're going about our lives. And so that feeds into the discussions that I'm lucky enough to be a part of. And even last week, it was a big week where I spoke about simplicity, and actually what a lot of that was this discussion around our backpacks that we all tend to load in life. But when was the last time that any of us truly emptied our backpack, had a good look at what we're carrying, our relationships, our burdens, our weights, that guilt, that shame, our possessions, and then just looking at all of those things, stripping it down to the things which are meaningful and essential, so as we can navigate the trials and burdens of life feeling much lighter as we go about our daily lives. And again, we're going off in different tangents, but that is why I just love these conversations. And again, my work is dedicated to empowering others to speak up about what really matters most, not text, not comment, not blog, which I will, I'm an advocate of all those things in their own domains, but it's real human connection, which really lights me up the most. And the more that I can apply myself to that, use my story and be in a vehicle through which other people's stories can flourish as well to inspire others, then we're going to have more courageous people in the world. And Vafa, I've got to ask about your relationship with your son, because I know that you're imparting so much of your courage onto him to live life on his terms. And one of my favorite songs is by Avicii, called The Nights, and some of the lyrics are to live a life you will remember. And that's certainly what I want for my 2-year-old son Maxwell as well. But I know that's something that you're so passionate about.
I'm really passionate about it. He's an integral part of my life. I bring him quite a lot into my stories and into my podcast. He was the person who interviewed me. He was the one who kind of pushed me, come on, I'll show you how to edit, because I had this kind of block in my mind that I can't edit. How do I edit? And he said, Mommy, I'll show you how to edit, because I'm a YouTuber, don't you know? So he was the one who said, right, let's have a quick chat, and we recorded it so that he could show me how to edit. And I just thought that that's ever so sweet that I had to put it out as my first episode of this podcast. And I thought, okay, fine, let's just go with it. For me, it's about modeling best behavior, and I can't tell him to do this, to do that. I have to become that person that I want him to be. I have to show him what it is like to live life on your terms. I couldn't go back to work being unhappy and yet say to him, choose something that makes you happy, because that's sending contradicting information. So for me, I had to become what I wanted him to aspire to be, to live life freely. And that's what I kind of encourage him to. And he's quite creative. He's really the opposite of me, very, very creative. And I just encourage him to carry on that path. So we all do the best we can for our children, right? We all do the best we can, and we're always learning. And who knows, I might be doing the wrong thing when I look at it 10 years down the line. But I hope That's, you know.
Yeah, but I mean, this kind of bridges the gap between what we were talking about on Clubhouse the other day. So, for
Yes,
those that don't know, Vafa is all over Clubhouse right now,
I'm all
and
over
it was actually
Clubhouse.
my first experience of being live on Clubhouse with you, where we spoke about this analogy of the mountain environment.
Mm.
And so, in life, we can go about the world, and we can stand at the bottom, and we can say to people, oh, you really should be doing this, or this is the way up, this is what I would do. Or we can be on the mountain ourselves and lend a hand back down and say, this is where I'm headed, if you want to come with me, come with me. And that feeds into the modeling. I think what I found fascinating is what people have picked out of my 5-year journey between psychiatrals, being on that motorway preaching to the world, and 5 years later being in true alignment with what I felt I was supposed to be on this planet truly for, which was to inspire others. But the two extremes of that behavior was that on that motorway, I was trying to force the world to do something it didn't really want to do at the time. I was trying to force the world to stop and slow down and follow their hearts. But again, it was all outward. Whereas 5 years on with Rome to Home, I was embodying, my beliefs, to slow down and to listen to what was going on for me, and to be a beacon for these really powerful conversations to flourish, to inspire others to speak up about the things which were really struggling them. So there's quite a different approach in life, but I think that's all we can do is model our behavior, be the champions of the things which we truly believe in. And again, that's why, having this conversation with you today was a no-brainer. For me, my intentionality comes from channeling my time, my energy and attention into my health, relationships, passions, growth, and being in service to other people. So right now, this is exactly what we're doing. I feel healthier every time, we have
Yeah,
these conversations, relationships with you. I'm passionate
yeah.
about this. I'm growing and being in service to other people. So again, even, that power of reflect, looking at the journeys we've all been on,
Mm.
and then using our own experiences. How do I live life intentionally and seemingly pack a lot in day to day? It's because I'm intentional about those 5 things. But again, that's only come from that journey of self-discovery,
Yes.
which is again why I'm so grateful for that experience I went on. And I know that's exactly the same for you, Vafa, as well.
It is exactly the same. It's such a sweet journey, isn't it? And you cannot explain to anybody. I can't actually articulate it in words. That's how impactful and how gorgeous that journey is. And it is about finding our values and living life congruently to those. And once you do, you become what you are and what you preach. So I remember when I started doing my course in NLP, because I've always loved NLP anyway. That was always a passion of mine, since back in the kind of late 80s when Tony Robbins was selling his programs on cassettes. Do you remember cassettes before even cars had CDs? So I always listened to him and I kind of liked it. But when I started learning it in a college environment, I decided that I didn't want to just learn this. I needed to kind of own it. And that's the only time I could then be an effective NLP coach. Because how could I just kind of wear this hat of being an NLP coach, take it off and then carry on with my normal life and then put it back on again? That wouldn't be it. So for me, I had to become it. So I guess we're going much deeper. We have to have a conversation about identity and how we kind of, how we kind of build those habits to kind of become who we are now, because we're very different beings, aren't we, now than we were kind of 5-6 years ago. But it is about believing that our purpose is what it is, having the courage to show up authentically and to articulate what we're about, and knowing that we're not going to appeal to everybody. So I think that's something my perfectionist me has had to accept, that I'm not gonna please everybody. I'm not going to appeal to everybody, and the people that we appeal to, we can impact, hopefully, and those that we don't appeal to, we wish them love and luck, and we'll see them down the road
Down the
somewhere
road.
else, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're really similar in that respect,
Yeah.
and certainly in my states of mania, which I have experienced over the years, that belief that my words, my actions will impact the whole world at times, of course, not sustainable, not realistic, and so much self-imposed pressure that I was putting on myself because, there were people out there that hadn't heard my message. So, there's a really unhealthy way that I was living my life before this whole chapter. And again, even day by day, now, if I've positively impacted the life of someone else today, whether it's with that phone call or somebody listening to this podcast episode, then that is absolutely fantastic. But there's a few things that hopefully will bridge, there's so many different tangents we could talk about, Vafa, but I think all of us have a story, and we will never ever know who we will positively impact by sharing our story. And whether that's a mother who is struggling, or whether that's a boss who feels alone because he's at the top of the pyramid in the organization, or whether that's a man who is struggling in science with struggling to become a father. All of us have these different stories that we go through that could be of benefit to other people, if we had the courage to share them. But I think, back to the key action with this whole podcast in the series, which I love so much, is about inspiring people to take action. And it's also reminding people that, finding that courage to speak openly about that thing that you've had going on for you, probably for far too long, if you're living in a state like this. I know how difficult it is sometimes to find that courage to speak openly about that thing you've got going on, but that is, of course, the power of finding a safe and supportive environment to have these conversations, whether that's with a coach or an NLP practitioner, a counselor, a therapist. I just could,
a champion, somebody who champions your cause. So that's my encouragement all the time, because oftentimes when we are on a bit of a career journey or a life journey, if we're not happy with where we are, the first people that we will confide in would be our best friends or our partner or our members of family. And they love us as we are. They sometimes may not even understand why we want to change, because they see this kind of, outwardly successful, happy person. They don't know what's going on the inside, do they? So that's when I always encourage people to find groups that share the common goal that you have, or the purpose that you have. Share people, or find people who share your values, people who can actually champion you on your way. I was listening to a book earlier today, and like many good books, it was just reiterating the fact that this author is successful not because he is he's got an inspirational story to tell, or whether he's different because he's just been more tenacious than the most. But he was saying that it was his environment. His environment was very, very important in the way he is. And I really believe that. And it's something that often goes amiss. So the environment that people belong to is crucial in how they develop. And sometimes that's where people stop developing, because they're not comfortable with stepping outside of that environment into an alien environment to them, where they really want to explore and become different beings. So that's my encouragement after that really long conversation.
Yeah, no, totally. And I'm just looking at my small library here in my office behind us, and the work of Johann Hari with his book Lost Connections really speaks to this, about how we are built to survive in tribes, and when we feel we're being kind of kicked out of the pack because we're acting or we're craving something different than the environment that we're in, then it's it can be really unsettling. That's where the anxiety and the fear and the doubt and the shame can absolutely build up. But I think with the times that we're living in, it's more easy than ever before to connect with like-minded people that have our back, whether that is on social media, and hopefully before too long, when we can get back out there in person, there are so many safe spaces to talk about the thing which is going on for you. And something which came to mind actually recently, which I discovered, was a survey that was done in America with men in particular who were struggling to speak up. So this was a survey with 5,000 men, and the question was, who are the people closest to you in your life that you would be open about your deepest, darkest secrets? And I think at the top of that list was their barber. The second was the barman.
Wow.
The third was their priest, if they were religious. Fourth would be their friends, and then fifth would be their family members. So it's really telling that actually, exactly. And it was just such a fascinating bit of research, because it just goes to show that actually, sometimes we just need that space to talk about the people who are closest to us in our lives, actually, because they're the ones that we're closest to in our environments. And that's nothing to do with them per se. It's just the environment that we're in. If we're in this bubble too much and we don't step back and have a look at the lives that we're living from all angles, i.e. where that conversation comes in with the barber or the barman, then we don't get that sort of 3D 360 perspective on the lives that we're living. And I think if we don't take that time out, to get that bird's eye view over the life that we're living, then I think we might be missing the show. And so I think that's something I could speak to all day long, is about, carving out that time to ask yourself those big questions, or connecting with groups, individuals out there that can, that you can dive into these conversations together with.
Yeah, and let me tell you, there are people out there who will listen to you and they will champion you. I cannot tell you how many beautiful minds I've come across. And the more open you are, the more you get out of the relationship. So for me, it's kind of peeling off those layers, taking one hat off after the other, one armor after the other. Just be yourself,
Yeah.
be the vulnerable yourself that you can be. And you will get tons of value out of speaking with people. And then you can become the change makers. When you're well and truly on your path, you're the one who will become the change maker. So
Absolutely.
beautiful,
Isn't it
beautiful.
Brené Brown? Isn't it Brené Brown who says, find somewhere to lay down your armor and step into the arena and
Oh
dive into
gosh.
these conversations
Oh
together.
God,
But I love
yes.
that. Find somewhere to lay down your armor because it's
Yep.
heavy, and then
Yep.
step into the arena, which we know can be scary.
Can be scary. And yes,
But to
she
have these
talks about it
conversations
quite
together.
right. She goes on to say that, we have this armor on when we're at work, then we come home, we take that off, we put another armor on, because then we become the wife and the husband and, whatever else, the mother, the father, the partner. And she said the moment of realization for her was when her husband said to her, I love you because of the goofing around that you're doing. That's not something that drives me away. It actually drives me towards you. So it's loving you for who you are, first and foremost for you, and then to kind of not be afraid of showing who you are, and letting people love you exactly as you are. So it's taking those armors off, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Which we've learned to wear in our society,
Yeah.
unfortunately. That's a conversation for another time. Dan, you see, I can bring it back. We need to have a conversation. We need to make a list of all the things that we've left unfinished here and delve into them, and perhaps even do a Facebook Live and invite people to come join us and kind of, have their input. So that's something that we could look at doing in the future, perhaps. So I'd love to speak to you
Absolutely.
again.
Absolutely. I think there's so many different strands to all of this, Vafa, and, inspiring courage. That means something different to everybody. And I think everybody will know where they're perhaps trying to find the courage in their own lives. But that is why these podcasts matter so much. And obviously, all the different strands you can go into are infinite, really, because it takes courage to be a great mother, and to take time out of your day to record these episodes. It takes courage to change jobs. It takes courage to venture out, beyond, new horizons or new oceans. And there's so many different strands we can go down into, Vafa. But something tells me that this is probably the start of an ongoing,
Absolutely.
relationship between us in one way or another, to keep these conversations alive, because they're certainly what light us up the most between the two of us.
Absolutely, and we're both quite experiential, so collaboration is something. I'm a sucker for collaboration, really, because I think when the power of two people is much more than the power of one person speaking, because it's about different perspectives again, isn't it? You speak the same message from your perspective, I speak it from my perspective, and then the power that has is magnified, in my humble opinion, because
Yeah.
people just take what they want out of it, because they have different maps, don't they, to you and I. So that's the power of storytelling again. It's been so
Yeah.
great having you, Dan, and I'm positive I'll bring you back again. So would you like to leave us with any thoughts?
I'm going to leave you with one of my favorite quotes, actually, and that is,
Yes,
when
please.
writing this. Yeah, so when writing the story of our lives, don't let anybody else hold the pen. So when writing the story of your life, don't let anybody else hold the pen. This is your life. So, as far as we're all aware, we only get one beautiful life that we're all on and experiencing side by side together. So when writing the story of your life, don't let anybody else hold the pen.
That made me tingle. Thank you. That's a beautiful note to leave it on. Thank you for being my guest today, and I look forward to speaking to you again.
Thanks, Vafa.